Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Before we begin, please like and subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. This happened to me 3 years ago, and I still can't look at jack-o'-lanterns the same way. Every Halloween since then, I keep my doors locked, lights off, and pretend I'm not home. Some of you might think I'm overreacting, but after what I experienced that night, you'd probably do the same. This is my story. My name is Derek, and back in October 2021, I was a sophomore at a college in rural Pennsylvania. I wasn't really into the whole Halloween scene, but my roommate Marcus was obsessed with it. He'd been planning this epic Halloween experience for weeks, and somehow convinced me and our 2 other friends, Jake and Brittany, to go along with it. The plan was simple. We'd drive out to this old pumpkin patch about 40 minutes outside of town, pick out some pumpkins, and then head to an abandoned farmhouse nearby that Marcus swore was haunted. Classic college Halloween stuff, right? We left campus around 8 p.m. on October 30th. Marcus wanted to go the night before Halloween because he said it would be more authentic. The drive out there was unsettling from the start. The roads got narrower and darker the further we went, with barely any streetlights. Dense forests lined both sides of the road, and a thick fog had started rolling in. When we finally arrived at the pumpkin patch, it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. There was a small wooden sign that read, "Hutchinson's Pumpkins," in faded letters. And beyond it stretched rows and rows of pumpkins disappearing into the darkness. No lights, no people, nothing. Just pumpkins and fog. "Are you sure this place is still open?" Brittany asked, clearly uncomfortable. Marcus laughed. "It's a pumpkin patch, not a store. You just take what you want and leave money in the box. Old school honor system." I noticed there was indeed a rusty metal box attached to a post near the entrance. But something about this whole setup felt wrong. The pumpkins looked neglected. Many were rotting, and there was this smell in the air, like decay mixed with damp earth. "Let's just grab some pumpkins and get out of here," I said. We walked into the patch, our flashlights cutting through the fog. The pumpkins were scattered everywhere, and as we got deeper in, I noticed they were arranged in strange patterns. Circles within circles, almost ritualistic. That's when Jake found it. "Guys, check this out," he called from about 20 feet away. We walked over to where he was standing, and my blood went cold. There was a pumpkin, but it wasn't carved like a normal jack-o'-lantern. The face looked carved from the inside out. The cuts were rough, jagged, and there was something dark and wet still clinging to the inside. "That's just someone being creative," Marcus said, but even he sounded uncertain. Brittany pointed her flashlight further into the patch. "There's more of them." She was right. As we looked around, we could see dozens of these inside-out pumpkins scattered throughout the patch, all with those same disturbing, jagged faces. Some of them still had chunks of what looked like raw meat stuck to them. "We need to leave." "Now," I said. But before we could move, we heard it. A sound like scraping metal coming from somewhere deep in the pumpkin patch. Then voices. Low, mumbling voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Run!" Marcus shouted. We bolted back toward the car, but the fog had gotten so thick we could barely see 3 feet in front of us. I kept tripping over pumpkins, and behind us the scraping sound was getting closer. The voices grew louder, chanting something I couldn't understand. That's when Brittany screamed. I turned around and saw her on the ground, her leg caught in something. As we ran back to help her, my flashlight revealed what had trapped her, a rope snare hidden among the pumpkins. This wasn't an accident. Someone had set traps. Jake and I frantically worked to free her leg while Marcus kept his flashlight pointed back toward the sounds. The chanting was getting louder, and through the fog I could see shapes moving. Human shapes, but wrong somehow. They were jerky, unnatural. "Got it," Jake yelled as the rope came loose. We hauled Brittany to her feet and ran. The fog seemed to part just enough for us to see the entrance, and we sprinted for the car. Behind us, the shapes were getting closer. I could hear footsteps now, lots of them, running through the pumpkin patch. Marcus fumbled with his keys, dropped them, picked them up. Those precious few seconds felt like hours. The shapes were almost on us now, and in the glow of the car's interior light as Marcus opened the door, I saw one of them clearly. It was wearing a hollowed-out pumpkin as a mask, but not a carved one. One that looked like it had been scraped out by hand. Through the eye holes, I could see very human, very angry eyes. We threw ourselves into the car and Marcus peeled out, spraying dirt and pumpkins everywhere. As we sped away, I looked back and saw at least a dozen figures standing at the entrance of the pumpkin patch, all wearing those horrible pumpkin masks, watching us go. We drove straight back to campus, none of us saying a word. The next day, we called the local police and told them what happened. They said they'd check it out, but when they called back, they told us the pumpkin patch didn't exist. According to their records, that property had been abandoned for over 15 years, and there was no Hutchinson's Pumpkins registered anywhere in the county. But here's the thing that still keeps me up at night. About a week after Halloween, I was checking my photos from that night. I'd forgotten I'd taken a few pictures at the entrance before we went in. In one of them, partially hidden by the fog in the background, you could see figures watching us from the tree line. They were already there when we arrived. We were never supposed to leave that pumpkin patch. I've never told this story publicly before. Marcus transferred to a different school the next semester. Jake and Brittany refused to talk about it. Sometimes I wonder if we stumbled onto something that wasn't meant to be found, or if something found us. Either way, I don't celebrate Halloween anymore. And if you ever see a pumpkin patch on a dark country road with no lights and no people, keep driving. Whatever's waiting there isn't worth finding out. This is story number 1. Stay safe out there. I'm about to tell you something that happened to me last Halloween, and honestly, I've been debating whether to share this at all. But I think people need to know, if you're planning to buy a costume this year, please, for the love of God, stick to the big chain stores. Don't go looking for vintage or authentic costumes at random places. What happened to me might sound impossible, but I have the scars to prove it's real. This is my story. My name is Trevor, and I live in Portland, Oregon. Last October, I was getting ready for my company's Halloween party. I'm a graphic designer at a tech startup, and they go all out for Halloween. We're talking a $500 prize for best costume. I'd won it the year before dressed as a zombie, so the pressure was on to top myself. I spent weeks searching online for the perfect costume, but everything looked cheap or overdone. Then, about 5 days before Halloween, I was driving home from work when I spotted this store I'd never noticed before. It was tucked between a laundromat and a closed-down diner, with a sign that simply read, "Masks and More, Vintage Costumes." The storefront looked old, like it had been there for decades, which was weird because I drove this route every single day and had never seen it. But I was desperate, so I parked and went inside. The moment I walked through the door, I knew this place was different. The air was thick and musty, and every inch of wall space was covered with masks, costumes, and props. But these weren't Party City knockoffs. These looked genuinely old, some of them probably from the early 1900s. "Can I help you find something?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. An old man had appeared behind the counter. He was probably in his 80s, with thin white hair and these intense gray eyes that seemed to look right through you. Yeah, I said. "I need a costume for a party, something unique." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Unique? Yes, I have just the thing. Follow me." He led me to the back of the store, past rows of unsettling masks and costumes that looked too realistic. We stopped in front of a black garment bag hanging alone in a corner. "This," he said, unzipping it slowly, "is a genuine Victorian mourning suit. From 1887, it belonged to a mortician named Edmund Voss. The suit was incredible, black, perfectly tailored, with a long coat and a white cravat. But what really caught my eye was the mask that came with it. It was a pale, emotionless face with small eye holes, the kind Victorian mourners would sometimes wear. "It's perfect," I said. "How much?" "For you, $50. That should have been my first red flag. A genuine Victorian suit for $50? But I was too excited to question it. "There's just one rule," the old man said as I paid. "Never wear the mask after midnight on Halloween. Take it off before then, no matter what. Do you understand?" I laughed nervously. "Sure, yeah. No problem." He stared at me for a long moment. "I'm serious, son. Before midnight. It's important." I nodded and took the garment bag, eager to leave. The whole interaction had been creepy, and I just wanted to get home. The night of the party, I put on the suit and mask. I looked incredible, like I'd stepped out of a Victorian funeral. Everyone at the party was blown away, and by 10 p.m., it was clear I was going to win the costume contest again. But here's where things got weird. As the night went on, I started feeling different. The mask fit so perfectly that I'd almost forgotten I was wearing it, and I found myself acting strangely. I was standing straighter, speaking more formally, and I had this overwhelming urge to correct people's posture and comment on the impropriety of their costumes. My coworker Madison came up to me around 11 p.m. "Dude, are you okay? You're being really weird." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words that came out weren't mine. "Your costume is inappropriate for polite company. A lady should conduct herself with more dignity." Madison looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "What the hell, Trevor?" I tried to apologize, but I couldn't. My body wouldn't respond the way I wanted it to. It was like I was a passenger in my own skin, watching someone else control my actions. Then I looked at my phone. 11:47 p.m. The old man's warning came rushing back. I needed to take the mask off. Now. I excused myself and rushed to the bathroom, my heart pounding. But when I reached up to remove the mask, I couldn't find the edge. I ran my fingers over my face, searching for where the mask ended and my skin began. But there was nothing. The mask felt like it had become part of my face. Panic set in. I looked in the mirror and saw that emotionless Victorian face staring back at me. I dug my nails under what should have been the mask's edge, and pain shot through my face. Real pain, like I was tearing at my own skin. At 5:02 p.m., I pulled harder, and blood started seeping from where my nails had broken the surface. This wasn't a mask anymore. It was becoming me, or I was becoming it. In the mirror, I watched in horror as my eyes began to change. The color was draining from them, turning them the same pale gray as the mask. And my thoughts, they weren't all mine anymore. I could feel another presence in my mind, old and angry and cold. Edmund Voss, the mortician. He was still in the suit, still in the mask, and he wanted his body back. At 6 p.m., I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed a hand towel, wrapped it around my fist, and punched the mirror as hard as I could. Glass shattered everywhere, and I grabbed a shard, my hand bleeding, and I pressed it against my face where the mask's edge should have been. "Get out," I whispered. "This is my body." 1:40 p.m. I started cutting, ignoring the pain, ignoring the blood pouring down my neck. I could feel Edmund fighting back, trying to take control completely, but I kept cutting, peeling, tearing at the mask. 5 p.m., the bathroom door burst open. Madison and two of my other co-workers stood there, horrified at the scene. I was covered in blood, holding a piece of broken mirror, half of the mask hanging off my face, and then midnight hit. The mask let go. It fell off completely, landing in the sink with a wet sound. But where it had been, my face was torn and bleeding, like I'd literally peeled off a layer of skin. I was rushed to the hospital. The doctors said I'd had some kind of psychotic break, that I'd mutilated myself. But I know what really happened. That mask was trying to replace me, to let Edmund Voss live again through my body. I have scars now, permanent ones across my face. They had to do skin grafts. When people ask what happened, I tell them it was an accident, but it wasn't. 2 weeks after Halloween, I went back to find that costume shop. I needed to return the suit to confront the old man. The store was gone. In its place was just a bare storefront with a for-lease sign. I asked at the laundromat next door, and the owner told me that space had been empty for over 3 years. I still have the suit. I tried to throw it away multiple times, but it always ends up back in my closet. And sometimes late at night, I can feel it calling to me, wanting to be worn again, but I'll never put it on, and I'll never wear a mask on Halloween again. The prize money from that costume contest is still sitting in my account. I can't bring myself to spend it. Every time I look at my bank statement, I see my scarred face in the mirror and remember that night. If you ever find a costume shop that seems too good to be true, that has authentic pieces for impossibly low prices, walk away. Some costumes come with more than just fabric and thread. They come with the people who wore them before, and sometimes those people want their lives back. This is story number 2. Stay vigilant out there. What I'm about to tell you will make you think twice about answering your door on Halloween night. I used to love handing out candy to trick-or-treaters, seeing the kids in their costumes, their excitement, their innocent joy. But after what happened to me 2 years ago, I don't even turn my porch light on anymore. I've moved twice since then, and I still check my locks multiple times every Halloween night. Some things once seen can never be unseen. This is my story. My name is Casey, and in October 2023, I was living in a quiet suburb outside of Austin, Texas. I'd just bought my first house, a nice little 2-bedroom place in a family-friendly neighborhood. Everyone told me the area went crazy for Halloween. Hundreds of kids, decorated houses, the whole 9 yards. I was excited. I bought full-size candy bars, decorated my front porch with fake cobwebs and jack-o'-lanterns, and even dressed up as a witch to hand out candy. I was ready to be that cool house on the block. Halloween night started perfectly. Kids started showing up around 6 p.m. and they just kept coming. Pirates, princesses, superheroes, zombies, all the usual costumes. I was having a blast, taking pictures, complimenting costumes, being the enthusiastic new neighbor. Around 8:30 p.m., things started to slow down. The younger kids had all gone home, and only the occasional group of teenagers would stop by. I was thinking about calling it a night when my doorbell rang again. I opened the door with my bowl of candy, ready to greet whoever it was. 3 children stood on my porch. They were wearing costumes, but something about them immediately felt off. The first was dressed as a scarecrow, the second as a plague doctor, and the third as what looked like an old-fashioned doll. All 3 costumes were incredibly detailed and unsettling. But what really got me were their masks. They were too realistic, too expressionless, and in the porch light, they looked almost wrong. Like they were made of something that wasn't quite rubber or plastic. "Trick or treat," they said in unison, their voices flat and emotionless. "Great costumes," I said, trying to shake off the weird feeling. I held out the candy bowl. None of them moved. "Go ahead, take some candy," I said, forcing a smile. The scarecrow tilted its head slowly, unnaturally, like a bird examining prey. "We want to come inside." My stomach dropped. "What? We want to come inside," the plague doctor repeated in that same flat tone. "That's not how trick-or-treating works, kids," I said, starting to close the door. "Take your candy and—" "We're not asking," the doll said. I froze. There was something in that voice, something ancient and cold that no child could produce. I looked closer at the 3 figures, and in the harsh porch light, I realized something horrifying. They weren't breathing. Their chests weren't moving at all. "I think you should leave," I said, my hand on the doorknob ready to slam it shut. The scarecrow took a step forward, and I saw its eyes through the mask. Black, completely black, like staring into empty holes. "You invited us. You turned on your light. You offered treats. By the old rules, you must let us in." "Old rules? What are you talking about?" My voice was shaking now. The plague doctor pulled something from its bag. At first, I thought it was a piece of candy, but as it held it up to the light, I realized it was a tooth, a human tooth, with the root still attached and dried blood clinging to it. "This is from the last house that refused us," it said. "Would you like to see the rest?" I tried to slam the door, but it wouldn't move. The doll had placed its hand against it, and despite being a small child, I couldn't budge the door an inch. Its grip was impossibly strong. "Let us in, Casey," the scarecrow said. My blood turned to ice. I'd never told them my name. I hadn't introduced myself, and there was no name on my mailbox or door. "How do you know my name?" All 3 of them tilted their heads in that same disturbing way. "We know everyone who celebrates the night without understanding it. We know everyone who plays at Halloween without respecting what it truly is." The doll pushed, and the door flew open, sending me stumbling backward into my hallway. All 3 of them stepped inside, moving in perfect synchronization. "Get out of my house," I screamed, running toward the kitchen to grab my phone. But they were faster. They didn't run, they just appeared in front of me, blocking my path. 1 second they were by the door, the next they were there, as if they'd teleported. "Every year we walk," the plague doctor said. "Every Halloween, we visit homes where people celebrate without knowing the price, where people invite the darkness in without understanding what they're inviting. The veil is thin tonight," the scarecrow continued. "Between the living and the dead, between your world and ours. And you, Casey, you threw open the door and beckoned us in." The doll reached up and slowly removed its mask. I can't describe what I saw underneath. It wasn't a face. It was something that had once been a face, maybe decades or centuries ago, but was now just rotted flesh barely clinging to bone, with eyes that glowed with a sickly yellow light. I screamed and ran for the back door, crashing through my kitchen. Behind me, I could hear them following. Not walking, not running, just that sound of them appearing closer and closer with each second. I burst out my back door into the yard and ran. I didn't stop running until I reached my neighbor's house 3 doors down, pounding on their door and screaming for help. The police came. They searched my house and found nothing. No kids, no masks, no signs of anyone being there except me. They checked the street cameras, and they showed kids approaching my house around 8:45 p.m. but the footage was corrupted, just static and distorted images. But here's what really got me. When they checked my house, they found something. In my living room, arranged in a perfect circle on the floor, were 13 human teeth. Old teeth, some of them brown with age, some still fresh with blood. The police had no explanation. I had no explanation. But I knew where they came from. I moved out the next day, stayed with friends until I could find a new place. But the teeth weren't the worst part. The worst part came 3 days later when I checked my doorbell camera footage from Halloween night. I watched myself answer the door at 8:45 p.m. I watched those 3 children approach. But in the video, I didn't just talk to them for a minute. I stood there frozen for 2 hours. From 8:45 p.m. until 10:47 p.m., I stood in my doorway, completely still, while those 3 figures circled around me, examining me, touching me with their small hands. And at the end of the footage, right before I snapped out of it, the scarecrow leaned in close to my ear, and the audio picked up what it whispered. "Next year, we'll take you with us. I've tried to forget. I've tried to move on. But every Halloween at exactly 8:45 p.m., my doorbell rings. Wherever I am, whatever house I'm in, the doorbell rings. And when I check the camera or look through the peephole, they're there. 3 figures, 3 masks, waiting. I don't answer anymore. I turn off all my lights, lock every door and window, and hide in my bedroom until midnight passes. And I pray that whatever rule I broke by not letting them in that second time is enough to keep them away. But I know they're getting impatient. Each year, the knocking gets louder, more insistent, and I'm terrified that one year, a locked door won't be enough to stop them. I'm telling you this because you need to understand something. Halloween isn't just a fun holiday. It has roots in ancient traditions, in beliefs about the dead walking among the living. When you turn on your porch light and invite strangers to your door, you're participating in something older and darker than you realize. And sometimes what comes knocking isn't looking for candy. They're looking for something much more permanent. Be careful who you invite in this Halloween. Not everything in a costume is human. This is story number 3. Keep your doors locked. I need to warn you about something before I tell this story. If you're someone who loves haunted house attractions, who seeks out the most extreme horror experiences, please listen carefully to what I'm about to say. There are some attractions that aren't acting. Some places where the screams are real and the blood isn't fake. I learned this the hard way, and I'm lucky to be alive to tell you about it. This happened to me last year, and I still wake up screaming. This is my story. My name is Jordan, and I'm what you'd call a haunted house enthusiast. I live in Michigan, and every October, my friends and I travel around hitting up the most extreme haunted attractions we can find. We've done McCamey Manor wannabes. We've signed waivers. We've been through houses where actors can touch you. We thought we'd seen it all. Last October, my buddy Vincent found something online. A post on a horror forum about an attraction called the Blackwood Experience, operating somewhere in rural Wisconsin. According to the post, it was the most realistic haunted house ever created, and only ran for 3 nights. October 29th, 30th, and 31st. The weird part? There was no official website, no address, just a phone number to call for directions. But that just made it more appealing to us. We wanted authentic, underground, extreme. Vincent called the number on October 28th. A woman answered, her voice raspy and cold, and gave us an address to a gas station in the middle of nowhere. She said to meet there at 10 p.m. on October 30th, and someone would guide us to the location. She also said we'd need to sign extensive waivers and that the experience lasted exactly 2 hours. Red flags? Absolutely. But we were idiots who thought we were invincible. On October 30th, Vincent, our friend Rochelle, and I drove 3 hours to this gas station in the middle of Wisconsin farmland. We arrived at 9:55 p.m. and the place was closed, dark except for a single streetlight in the parking lot. At exactly 10 p.m., a black van pulled up. No company name, no decorations, just a plain black van with tinted windows. The driver's window rolled down, and a man in a ski mask looked at us. "You here for Blackwood?" His voice was muffled. "Yeah," Vincent said, way too enthusiastically. "Follow me. Don't lose sight of my van. The roads aren't marked." We followed him for about 20 minutes down increasingly dark and narrow roads. No streetlights, no other cars, just woods on both sides. Finally, we pulled up to what looked like an old farmhouse, but it had been transformed with theatrical lighting and fog machines. A wooden sign read, "The Blackwood Experience. Enter at your own risk." Several other cars were already parked there. The masked driver got out and led all of us, maybe 12 people total, to a barn next to the farmhouse. Inside, a woman in Victorian morning clothes sat at a desk with a stack of papers. "These are your waivers," she said in that same raspy voice from the phone. "Read them carefully. Sign them if you agree. If you don't sign, you can leave now and get a full refund." The waiver was insane. It went on for 6 pages, talking about psychological distress, physical contact, simulated violence, and a clause that said we couldn't sue for any experiences that may result in lasting trauma. There was even a section about how we couldn't contact authorities during the experience or for 24 hours. Afterward, Rochelle looked at me nervously. "This seems like a lot." "It's just to scare us," Vincent said, already signing. "It's part of the experience." Like idiots, we all signed. The woman collected our papers and smiled, revealing teeth that were filed to points. "Welcome to Blackwood. You have 2 hours. Stay together. Don't leave the marked path. And remember, everything you see is real." That last part should have stopped us. The way she said real, like it was a threat, not a reassurance. They split us into groups of 4 and sent us in at 5-minute intervals. Our group was me, Vincent, Rochelle, and a guy named Kyle who we just met. They handed us a single flashlight and pushed us through a door into complete darkness. The first 30 minutes were incredible. It was easily the most realistic haunted house we'd ever experienced. Actors in horrifying costumes would jump out. The sets were incredibly detailed, and the sound design was perfect. We were having the time of our lives. Then we entered a room that looked like an old operating theater. Hospital beds, surgical tools, the whole setup. An actor dressed as a surgeon was standing over one of the beds, and there was someone strapped to it struggling. "Please help me," the person on the bed screamed. "They're really going to cut me! This isn't fake!" We laughed. The acting was amazing. The surgeon picked up a scalpel and moved toward the person's arm. "Wait," Rochelle said, grabbing my sleeve. "Look at the blade." In our flashlight beam, I could see the scalpel. It wasn't a prop. It was real, genuine surgical steel, and it looked sharp. The surgeon pressed it against the person's arm, and blood welled up immediately. Not fake blood, real blood, the way it actually flows from a fresh cut. The person on the bed was shrieking now, fighting against the restraints, and the sound was wrong. It wasn't acting. It was genuine terror and pain. "Stop!" I yelled, moving forward. "That's too realistic." The surgeon turned to look at us, and through the surgical mask, I saw his eyes. They were empty, dead, like looking at a corpse. He spoke, but his mouth didn't move. "You signed the waiver." "You agreed. Keep moving." Kyle tried to help the person on the bed, but the moment he touched them, something invisible threw him backward across the room. He hit the wall hard and crumpled to the ground. "Run!" Rochelle screamed. We grabbed Kyle and bolted through the next door. My heart was pounding. That wasn't special effects. Something had physically thrown Kyle without anyone touching him. The next section was worse. We entered what looked like a chapel, but everything was inverted. Crosses hung upside down, and there was a strong smell of sulfur. Figures in black robes stood in a circle, chanting in a language I didn't recognize. In the center of the circle was a pentagram drawn in what looked like fresh blood, and inside it stood a child. Couldn't have been more than 8 years old, standing perfectly still, staring at us with solid black eyes. "Mommy says you're late," the child said in a voice that didn't match its age. Something ancient and hateful. "You were supposed to arrive an hour ago. Now the ritual is incomplete." "This isn't part of it," Vincent whispered, all his bravado gone. "We need to leave. Now." We tried to go back the way we came, but the door had vanished. Just a solid wall where the door had been seconds before. The robed figures started moving toward us, still chanting, and the child began to laugh. Not a child's laugh. Something that made my bones ache and my teeth hurt. Rochelle found a different door, hidden behind a curtain, and we crashed through it. We ran through corridor after corridor, past rooms filled with increasingly disturbing scenes. In one room, we saw other visitors from earlier groups, standing frozen like statues, their eyes wide with terror but their bodies completely still. In another room, we saw the waivers we'd signed, but now they were written in blood, and the signatures were moving, writhing like living things. We finally burst into what looked like an exit, a door with an emergency exit sign. We slammed through it and found ourselves outside, but not where we'd started. We were deep in the woods, surrounded by fog, and the farmhouse was nowhere in sight. "Where the hell are we?" Kyle asked, his voice shaking. That's when we heard them. Footsteps. Dozens of them, coming from every direction through the fog. And voices, chanting that same strange language from the chapel. We ran blindly through the woods, branches tearing at our clothes and faces. I don't know how long we ran. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Eventually, we broke through the tree line and found ourselves on a road. We flagged down a car, an elderly couple who were terrified by our appearance. We were covered in scratches, Rochelle was crying, and Kyle's arm was clearly broken from when he'd been thrown. They drove us to the nearest police station. We told them everything, gave them the address where we'd been, described the van, the farmhouse, everything. The police investigated. They found nothing. According to their records, that property had been abandoned for 15 years. The farmhouse we'd seen had burned down in 2008. The gas station where we'd met the van closed since 2015. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. When the police checked the woods where we'd run from, they found 12 graves, fresh ones. And in each grave, they found a waiver, signed by someone who'd gone to the Blackwood experience over the past 3 years. They never found the bodies. Just the waivers, buried 6 feet deep. Vincent won't talk about it. He moved to California 2 months later. Kyle's in therapy. And last I heard, he's on multiple medications for PTSD. Rochelle and I still keep in touch, but we never talk about that night. I still have nightmares. In them, I'm back in that farmhouse, and I'm reading the waiver again. But this time, I can see what it really says, hidden in the legal language. By signing this document, you agree to surrender your soul to the Blackwood estate upon death, and you consent to join the attraction permanently. We signed our souls away that night. The only reason we're still alive is because we ran before the 2 hours were up. The ritual wasn't complete, but I know they're waiting. Somewhere, in some farmhouse that exists between realities, the Blackwood experience is still running. And every year on October 30th, my phone rings at exactly 10 p.m. I never answer, because I know what that raspy voice will say. Jordan, you never finished your tour. We're holding your spot for next year. If you ever see an advertisement for an extreme haunted house with no website, no official address, and waivers that seem excessive even by horror attraction standards, don't go. Some experiences aren't meant to be survived. Some attractions don't let you leave. Read every word of those waivers and ask yourself if the thrill is worth the price. Because sometimes the price isn't money. Sometimes it's everything. This is story number 4. Choose your attractions carefully. I'm going to tell you about a Halloween party I attended in 2022, and why I'll never go to another Halloween party for as long as I live. What started as a normal college party turned into something that still haunts me every single night. 3 people disappeared that night, and I'm one of the only witnesses who made it out. The police closed the case as unsolved, but I know what really happened. And I know that whatever was at that party is still out there, waiting for next Halloween. This is my story. My name is Alex, and back in October 2022, I was a junior at a college in New Orleans. If you know anything about New Orleans, you know Halloween there is intense. The city takes it seriously, and the parties are legendary. My roommate Destiny had been talking about this party for weeks. It was supposed to be at this massive mansion in the Garden District, hosted by someone named Crowley, apparently some rich grad student who threw the most insane parties. The invite was exclusive, passed around by word of mouth only. No social media posts, no public announcements. Destiny got us on the list through a friend of a friend. The instructions were weird. Come in costume, arrive between 10 p.m. and midnight, and bring something old. That last part was strange, but Destiny said it was probably just some quirky theme thing. On October 31st, we got ready. I dressed as a plague doctor, Destiny went as a fallen angel, and our friends Nathan and Ivy joined us, dressed as a vampire and a witch respectively. For the something old requirement, I brought an antique pocket watch my grandfather had given me. The others brought various vintage items. Old jewelry, books, that kind of thing. We arrived at the mansion around 11 p.m. The place was incredible. A genuine Victorian mansion, 3 stories, with the whole property decorated with elaborate Halloween displays. Music was thumping inside, and people in amazing costumes were everywhere. At the door, a tall man in a pristine Victorian suit and an ornate mask greeted us. His costume was easily the best I'd seen all night. "Welcome," he said in a smooth, cultured voice. "I'm Crowley. Did you bring your offerings?" "Offerings?" Nathan laughed. "You mean the old stuff?" "Precisely." Crowley held out a silver tray. Place them here. They'll be returned at the end of the night. We put our items on the tray. My watch, Destiny's grandmother's ring, Nathan's vintage flask, and Ivy's antique compact mirror. Crowley examined each item carefully, nodded with satisfaction, and gestured for us to enter. Enjoy the party. But remember, when the clock strikes 3, everyone must be gone. No exceptions. The party was amazing. The mansion was decorated like something out of a gothic horror movie, with genuine antiques and period furniture. The bar was open, the music was great, and there must have been 200 people there, all in incredible costumes. Around midnight, I was getting a drink when I noticed something odd. In the corner of the main ballroom, there was a door I hadn't seen before. It was partially hidden behind a curtain, and unlike the rest of the mansion, it looked genuinely old and weathered. A woman in a Venetian mask approached me. Curious about the door? Yeah, I said. Where does it lead? The real party. Upstairs. But you need a special invitation for that. She leaned in close, and I could smell something strange on her breath, like old roses and decay. Crowley only invites special guests, those who brought the most interesting offerings. Before I could respond, Crowley appeared beside us. How he'd gotten there so fast, I don't know. He'd been across the room a second ago. Alex, isn't it? He smiled beneath his mask. Your pocket watch is fascinating. 18th century, if I'm not mistaken. It has quite a history. It was my grandfather's, I said, unsettled by how much he seemed to know about it. Would you like to see the upper floors? I think you'd appreciate the authentic period pieces in my collection. Something in his voice made me uncomfortable, but I was curious, and maybe a little drunk. Sure, why not? He led me, along with 5 other guests, through that hidden door and up a narrow staircase. The temperature dropped with each step, and the sounds of the party below faded unnaturally fast. The second floor was different. The decorations weren't decorations anymore. They were real. Genuine Victorian furnishings, portraits that looked centuries old, and candles providing the only light. No electricity up here. Welcome to the real collection, Crowley said, removing his mask. I wish I could tell you what his face looked like, but I can't. Not because I don't remember, but because my brain refuses to process it. It was human but wrong, like looking at a face through distorted glass, or a face that existed in too many dimensions at once. The other guests gasped and tried to run back down the stairs, but the door had vanished. Just a solid wall where we'd entered seconds before. You brought me offerings, Crowley continued, his voice changing, becoming something ancient and inhuman. Old things, touched by time, filled with memories and life. These are not trinkets to me, they are doorways. He held up my grandfather's watch, and it began to glow with a sickly green light. This watch has seen death. It was in your grandfather's pocket when he died, wasn't it? It absorbed that moment, that transition between life and death. And now, it's a key. The watch exploded into fragments of light, and through those fragments, I saw something forming. A shape, human but not, made of shadow and old memories. It looked like my grandfather, but twisted, corrupted. The same thing was happening to the other guests' items. Each one was releasing something, and these somethings were moving toward us with clear intent. Every Halloween, the veil thins, Crowley said. And now I could see he was changing too. His human disguise falling away to reveal something that had never been human at all. Every Halloween I collect offerings and open doors. And those who bring me the best keys get to stay, forever. One of the other guests, a girl named Monica, screamed and ran toward a window. She crashed through it, glass shattering, and fell. From 3 stories up, she should have hit the ground outside. But through the broken window, there was no outside. Just darkness, infinite darkness, and Monica fell into it, her screams fading into nothing. I don't know how I did it, but I ran. Not toward the walls or windows, but deeper into the mansion, through corridors that shouldn't exist, past rooms filled with people who weren't quite people anymore. Some of them were wearing costumes from decades past, 1950s, 1920s, even Victorian era. They'd all been trapped here, preserved, forced to attend Crowley's eternal Halloween party. I found stairs, different stairs, servants' stairs, and ran down them. Behind me, I could hear Crowley and those things chasing, their footsteps wrong. Too many legs, too many joints. I burst through a door and found myself in the kitchen. The regular party was still going on in the other rooms, people dancing and drinking, completely unaware. But when I looked at the clock on the kitchen wall, it read 2:55 a.m., 5 minutes until 3. Until everyone had to be gone. I ran through the party, grabbing Destiny, finding Nathan and Ivy. "We need to leave. Now!" They could see the terror on my face and didn't argue. We ran for the exit, pushing through confused partygoers. Behind us, I heard a bell begin to toll. The clock was striking 3, the first chime, and the music cut out. The second chime, and the lights began to flicker. The third chime, and people started screaming as they realized the doors were sealing shut. We crashed through the front door just as the fourth chime sounded, stumbling onto the front lawn. Behind us, the mansion's windows went dark, all at once, and the screaming inside reached a crescendo before cutting off completely. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, called by neighbors who'd heard the screams, the mansion was empty. No bodies, no evidence of a party, nothing. Just an empty house that, according to city records, had been abandoned for 30 years. They never found Monica or the other 4 people who'd gone upstairs with me. They never found any of the partygoers who hadn't made it out before 3 a.m. The case remains unsolved, but I know what happened to them. They're still there, in that mansion, trapped in Crowley's eternal Halloween celebration. And every year, on October 31st, another party happens. New invitations go out, new people bring offerings, and new guests join the collection. I tried to warn people. I posted about it online, reported it to authorities, told anyone who would listen. But every year, the party still happens. And every year, people disappear. Last Halloween, I got an invitation slipped under my door. It was written in old script on yellowed paper. "Alex, you left something behind. Your grandfather's watch. Come retrieve it. The party awaits. Crowley." I burned the invitation immediately. But I know he's waiting. I know that somewhere in New Orleans, in a mansion that exists in the spaces between reality, Crowley is preparing for this year's party. And I know that eventually, he'll come to collect what I owe him. If you ever get invited to an exclusive Halloween party with strange requirements, especially if you're asked to bring something old, don't go. These aren't just parties. They're traps. Collection events for things that feed on memory and life and time. Check the address against city records. Ask questions. And most importantly, if you do go and you see something wrong, leave before the designated end time. Because some parties don't let you leave. Some celebrations last forever. This is story number 5. Trust your instincts.